As we know, the wheels of justice do not always run smoothly. But when international borders are involved, there are many more layers of red tape and bureaucracy standing in the way of those creaking wheels. We're travelling to South Africa today, a country with an uncomfortable history with justice, and indeed with the perception of justice. In reality, this was a murder committed in full sight of many witnesses, and it was cruel and brutal. But failures in the system allowed the perpetrator the opportunity to flee the country, and it took an extremely painful 7 years to bring him back to South Africa from Brazil, where he had a whole new life and family. Ultimately, justice was done, but the fact this murderer could have a new life for 7 years before it was done was a poke in the eye to Lady Justice, and leaves a very bad taste in the mouth. This is the murder of Andrea Venter, and this is Murder of Crows.
Say that you're ready, but you won't like it. You say that you're ready, but you won't like it. Silence all the crows, lining up in little rows. A sudden chill surrounds me. Silence all the crows, see come out and say you're wrong. A sudden chill.
Rhys and Andrea Venter lived in Rustenburg in 1984 and were desperate for a child. Their son Corbus had been born a decade earlier in 1973, but they yearned for another child. In the intervening 10+ years, they suffered 2 miscarriages before their prayers were answered through the newly developed methodology of in vitro fertilization. The healthy baby girl was named Andrea and was the first child in Rustenburg produced this way, and just the 9th in all of Pretoria. Unsurprisingly then, she was very cherished by her parents, who considered her a precious and special gift. She had a wonderful childhood in Rustenburg, where she was treasured by the parents that had waited so long for her. As she was becoming a young adult, she was committed to an academic path that would help her become an accountant. And to that end, she attended Northwest University to study accounting. And after qualifying, she got a job at an accounting firm. The pieces of her life were falling into place, except perhaps for someone to share life's journey with. But that was about to change. At the job that she absolutely adored, she crossed paths with a young man called Gerhard Janssen van Vuren, and they began a relationship, and it seemed to be as idyllic as the rest of her life had been. At first, anyway. When things began to change, it was initially gradual. Andrea was slowly isolated from her family and friends, but unlike some people where this may go somewhat unnoticed, Andrea was very close to her parents, so it became apparent quite quickly that something had changed and wasn't quite right. From talking almost daily, Andrea's parents were finding it increasingly difficult to be able to talk to their daughter. On the occasions that they could, the change in her character was significant and definitely negative. From an ebullient and cheerful young woman, she had gone into her shell, presenting as timid and nervous. It was clear to them that Van Vuren was emotionally and perhaps even physically abusing Andrea. On the occasions that they tried to intervene, Van Vuren threatened to kill them. Eventually, when Rhys Evans witnessed the abuse of his daughter for himself, he made a police report. After seeing his daughter being screamed at while in a car with Van Vuren, before she was forcibly thrown out of the car and had a laptop chucked at her, as you do, Rhys felt it was the last straw. But unfortunately, the police took no action against Van Vuren. The final straw for Andrea Venter herself came when Van Vuren strangled her to unconsciousness following an argument. She filed a restraining order against the controlling thug, and knowing he would keep showing up if she stayed where she was, moved away from Rustenburg, only telling those that really needed to know that she was now living in Johannesburg. At just 25 years old, she was making a fresh start in a big city. But relocation and a piece of paper would not stop the obsessive Van Vuren finding Andrea, who he thought of as his property, including saying the age-old, "If I can't have you, then nobody will." So he hatched a plan. He knew Andrea was an accountant. So even though Johannesburg had a population of almost 4.5 million in 2011, he figured she must be working for an accounting firm. So he set about calling every last one of them. If he wasn't so vile, his persistence and determination would be almost admirable. On the 34th call he made, Andrea answered the phone, and he stated in ominous tones, "Now I know where to find you." Now Andrea was understandably terrified, but this was only the start of Van Vuren's plan. Now he knew where she worked, he started hanging around her near her workplace. And one day he followed her home. So he now knew where she worked and where she lived. On May the 2nd, 2011, he made his move. He went to Four Ways in Johannesburg and to the complex where Andrea was living. Once there, he would get inside her unit and hold her captive, and use a knuckle duster to keep her passive. When she took a chance and managed to flee the unit and head towards the guardhouse of the complex, but Van Vuren was in very close pursuit. Now, such was his rage and obsession, he didn't care who witnessed what happened next. In full view of numerous witnesses and the complex CCTV, he began a frenzied knife attack on his ex-girlfriend. Ignoring Andrea's anguished screams, Van Vuren stabbed her 14 times, 12 of which were in her back as she was trying to run away from him. Tulani Undov was the guard on duty, and he tried desperately to intervene as Van Vuren slit Andrea's throat. Van Vuren attacked and threatened Undov, who retreated to the guardhouse, locked the door and alerted authorities. Rather than attempt to flee at this point, Van Vuren loosened and discarded a belt that had previously been secured around Andrea's neck, before stabbing himself in the neck and then lying down next to her. Cuckoo. When authorities arrived, Van Vuren was transported to the hospital, where he survived his injury and was duly arrested and detained. It should then have been a case of taking Van Vuren to trial, with the mountain of physical and forensic evidence, including CCTV footage, against him. But there were two issues that no one had banked on. First, albeit after two failed attempts, Van Vuren was inexplicably granted bail ahead of his trial, which was due to begin on May the 3rd, 2013. And the bail was set at an insultingly low 15,000 rand, equivalent to around about £450 at the time. And secondly, the willingness of Van Vuren's vile parents, Gerhard Janssen Sr. and Thea, who were more than prepared to give him false documents and help him get on a plane to flee the country. So his mother got him a false passport in the name of Daniel Joseph Mouton, and his father drove him to the airport, where he hopped on a plane to Brazil without a care in the world. A big old well played to Johannesburg High Court Judge Fritz van Oosten, who decided to not only grant him bail, but also the level of bail that could be made from a productive day busking. The clusterfuckery of this debacle cannot be believed. But never fear, dear viewer. Interpol rolled into action and were waiting for Van Vuren as he touched down in Brazil. He was arrested, but only for using a false passport. He was then jailed in Brazil for a whopping 2 years, after which Brazil refused to extradite him to face charges in South Africa. Not only that, but when he was released in Brazil in 2015, the Brazilian authorities did not inform the South African authorities that Van Vuren was now free in Brazil, where he created a new name and a new identity and disappeared into the population of Rio de Janeiro. Jesus Christ on a moped with Mother Teresa in the sidecar. Can you believe that? Nothing further was heard for 5 years. But in 2020, Van Vuren reared his ugly head to contact his mother through Facebook. From there he would go on to talk to his mother on the phone. It was during this call that he revealed that he had married a will slaying of his ex-girlfriend back in his homeland. But this phone call would allow Interpol the opportunity to begin tracking down Van Vuren, and this process was successful. On June the 18th, 2020, federal police in Brazil kicked in Van Vuren's door and arrested the shitbrick. After some time in Brazilian custody, Van Vuren was finally sent back. It would be too late for the mother of Andrea Venter, who died just after her 63rd birthday, and never got to see Van Vuren face the long overdue justice that Andrea deserved. At the pre-trial in South Africa, Rhys Evans, Andrea's father, requested and was granted permission to read a letter to the court. He said, addressing this much to Van Vuren, "Thank you very much for honouring us with your presence. Thank you very much for fleeing. You did yourself a huge favour by fleeing the country. The long arm of justice has tracked you down. You know how I felt, and now you know that I have no sympathy for you or for your parents. Not you nor your parents can compensate me, my wife and me, for the murder of Andrea, our child. My wife died because of the heartache that you caused when you killed Andrea. In fact, you are responsible for killing my wife as well. That means 2 murders." Incredibly strong words from a man with the incredible strength to stand up and say them. He also recalled the trauma of having to identify his beautiful daughter's battered body through a glass window after she was killed, saying, "It was traumatic. Her eye was slit open. Her nose and jaw were also broken." The defence claimed conveniently that Van Vuren had no recollection of the events before, during and after the murder, but claimed he was very sorry. By this time, Van Vuren's mother had changed her opinion and stance regarding her selfish Asperger of a son. She stated that he did not have a remorseful bone in his body. In an interview, she alleged that during one conversation with her son when she visited him in jail, he said that once he was released, he would kill everyone who was involved or helped to put him behind bars, including her. Gerhard Jansen Van Vuren was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Andrea Venter. Long overdue justice, but the verdict and sentence would not bring Andrea back, or bring any solace to Andrea's mother, who had already died of a broken heart. This video is dedicated to Andrea Venter, but also to Nitty Venter, both of whose deaths were directly and indirectly the result of the actions of a vile, controlling arsehole. I hope Rhys and Cobus Venter have found ways to deal with their grief, and I send them empathy and compassion and love. Thank you for watching another episode of Murder of Crows. I'm Steve. This orange tiger wannabe is Samson. And we'll see you when we see you.